Rule number one, karate for defense only.
Back in the 80s, the Karate Kid was one of the most badass things ever, especially if you were a teenager. Not only did it present a highly compelling coming-of-age story, but it also served as many teenagers' introduction to the world of martial arts. I mean, watching a normal guy like Daniel-san perform all of those amazing backflips was bound to attract a bunch of new fans to the sport. Well, you might not know, but the form of fighting utilized by Daniel in the movies and the TV show is actually a pretty unique style known as Miyagi-Do Karate, and in this marvelous video, that's exactly what we're going to be diving into. But before we begin this journey through the lore of this elusive fighting style, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. It might just be a small click for you, but to us, it means an awful lot. With that out of the way, I guess it's time to put on your gis because this is the entire lore of Miyagi-Do Karate. Let's go!
First Miyagi bring karate to Okinawa.
Oh, the one who went to China.
Aye.
From Okinawa to the Valley, unfolding the legacy of Miyagi-Do Karate. Miyagi-Do Karate, or the Way of the Miyagi, is undoubtedly one of the most iconic styles of fighting ever committed to film. I mean, who doesn't remember that spinning crane kick that put Johnny Lawrence down at the All-Valley Karate Tournament? Well, despite the widespread appeal of the style, its origins can be a bit difficult to trace. After all, the clues are spread across several movies, comics, cartoons, and a Netflix series. Well, don't worry because we're going to connect the dots for you. Miyagi-Do Karate originated in the Okinawa prefecture of Japan many centuries ago. Since then, it's been passed down through generations of Miyagi until it finally made its way to America at the hands of the great teacher and war hero, Nariyoshi Miyagi. Though it's essentially an extremely refined form of hand-to-hand combat and self-defense, the Miyagi Way is actually more than it appears at first glance. In stark contrast to its greatest rival in the valley, the Cobra Kai, the Miyagi school focuses more on inner peace and balance than aggression and victory. Not to say that it can't win fights, but a true practitioner of the form will never be the first to strike. At its core, Miyagi-Do Karate is actually philosophy that extends to an individual's entire life and enables them to find balance no matter how dire the circumstances are. However, the fighting part is definitely more fun, so we'll start with that. The fighting techniques under the Miyagi school focus mainly on defense and are inspired by the real-world fighting style of Goju Ryu. The founder of Goju Ryu was a man known as Chajin Miyagi, and, well, that's no coincidence. Chajin's image actually appears in a couple of episodes in the series, such as Back in Black and Miyagi-Do. A closer inspection of the photos in the school also allows us to catch a glimpse of other great martial arts practitioners like Sakugawa Kanga and Morihei Ueshiba, two great teachers who taught the forms Tude and Aikido respectively. The practitioners of Miyagi-Do Karate are also required to wear special gis, which carry patches that closely resemble the ones worn by fighters of Goju Ryu. As a defensive fighting style, Miyagi-Do Karate focuses on a large range of blocks and counterattacks, which utilize the momentum from the attacker's body to inflict damage. One can also find elements of judo in this style, which enables the fighter to incorporate a variety of throws into their arsenal. However, to truly understand this form and its philosophy, we must first truly understand the man who brought it to the valley, Mr. Miyagi. Mr. Miyagi was actually a descendant of the original practitioner of Miyagi-Do Karate, the ancient master known as Shimpo Karate. It has been noted that the two masters were strangely similar to each other, both calm and composed men with a fondness for fishing. It is said that once upon a time, Shimpo went out fishing and got way more drunk than he was supposed to.
Shimpo sensei fall asleep off coast of Okinawa, wake up off coast of China.
When he eventually woke up, his boat had entered the coast of China. Shimpo would spend the next 10 years of his life in China, where he eventually got married and had 2 kids. But even more importantly, it was in China that Shimpo came up with the core tenets of the secret Miyagi family karate. In the first film, Miyagi explicitly mentions that his ancestors derived the secrets of Miyagi-Do Karate from China, which is strangely consistent with the real fact that many Okinawan masters were actually trained in the Chinese arts during this period. The secret to Miyagi family karate appears to be Den-Den Daiko, on which the drum technique is based. This form also incorporates other styles like Kata Tensho, the crane technique, breathing techniques, and Kata Seunshin into its arsenal, making it especially well-rounded. Mr. Miyagi was born on June 9, 1925 in Tomi Village, Okinawa, Japan. He first began training under the tutelage of his father, who was a simple fisherman.
Miyagi, remember, first time father teach fishing. Right off this
The old master would later claim that it was his father who taught him to fish in the quiet waters of Okinawa when he was just 2. As he grew up, Miyagi found a job under one of his father's other pupils, a man known as Sato. Unfortunately, Miyagi falls in love with Sato's betrothed, a young woman called Yuki. Yuki's marriage to Sato had already been prearranged according to a custom in their village. This would lead to a major conflict between Sato and Miyagi, which would only end when Sato challenged the latter to a death fight.
Never fight. Next day, leave Okinawa forever.
To avoid that fight, Mr. Miyagi left Okinawa during the night, and, well, that's how he made it to America. Finding his way to Hawaii as a teenager, Miyagi worked a bunch of odd jobs around the farms until he finally moved to Los Angeles along with his wife, whom he met while working on the farms. In LA, Miyagi would graduate from Santa Barbara University and find his way to the US Army. After the bombing of Pearl Harbor in 1941, citizens of Japanese descent were discouraged from entering the World War, and even those in active service were demoted to reserve units to prevent sabotage.
Sergeant Miyagi! Yes, sir! Sergeant Miyagi, report to kill me.
Despite these challenges, Mr. Miyagi was drafted in 1944 and became a part of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. This regiment was stationed in Italy and was pivotal in some very brutal conflicts, including the Battle of Anzio. The 442nd Infantry Regiment would go on to become one of the most decorated regiments in the history of the U.S. Armed Forces, with about 21 Medal of Honor recipients among their ranks. Of course, our beloved Mr. Miyagi was one of them. He rose steadily to the rank of Staff Sergeant during his service and earned numerous honors like the Silver Star, Bronze Star, Army Commendation Medal, Purple Heart, Presidential Unit Citation, and more along the way. Needless to say, the man was pretty familiar with fighting by the time the war ended. It was also in the war that Miyagi found his first student, Lieutenant Jack Pierce, a close friend to whom he taught karate in exchange for formal dance lessons. However, while Miyagi was still in the war, he suffered a great personal tragedy. His wife, who was living at the Manza internment camp, passed away from complications during childbirth along with their infant son. This loss would haunt Miyagi for decades, as a result of which he turned into a recluse and never remarried. After his wife's death, Miyagi was relieved from the military and built a simple life as a maintenance man. He was living a simple life as a gardener and vintage car collector when a chance encounter with young Daniel LaRusso would change both their lives forever. And, as we all know by now, Mr. Miyagi would come to young Daniel's rescue one fateful night when the teenager was being beaten up by a bunch of Cobra Kai students led by Johnny Lawrence. After a stunning display of Miyagi-Do Karate, Miyagi would take the young Daniel under his wing and teach him the ways of the secret family art. However, Daniel's eventual victory at the All-Valley Karate Tournament would be far from easy, as mastery in Miyagi-Do Karate requires extensive dedication and hard work, and it's not all as simple as doing a few push-ups. Thus, in our next section, we'll be taking a look at all the different techniques incorporated within Miyagi-Do Karate and the training they require.
Look, always look,
Miyagi-Do techniques and badassery. Though the training techniques utilized by the Miyagi school are mostly consistent, the different masters have all put a unique spin on them over time. Let's start with Mr. Miyagi.
Wax on, right hand. Wax off, left hand.
Number 1. Wax on, wax off. Well, one of the most memorable sequences from the original film involves Miyagi instructing Daniel to wax his collection of vintage cars. However, Daniel must accomplish this in a pretty strange way, applying circular motions with his hands in tandem with his breathing. The lesson took about a whole day for Daniel to master. When Daniel started his own school, he would incorporate this into his training routine as well. Turns out, it's not about having the cars sparkling clean at all. Instead, it's a way to master the basic blocks of Miyagi-Do by performing the action so many times that it literally becomes a part of the student's muscle memory. Number 2. Sand the floor. The students use Japanese sanders to sand the wooden deck of the dojo. But these movements take place in the opposite directions of the first exercise, and once again, it takes Daniel an entire day to master it. Number 3. Paint the fence. Using a simple paintbrush, the student must apply paint to the fence with a focus on wrist movement. They use their left hand for the smaller boards and their right hand for the larger ones. This training is then further extended to the entire house, and one must also utilize a ladder, which makes it all the more frustrating.
Show me sand the floor.
I can't move my arm, all right?
Number 4. Show. Well, this is the part where all of our minds were collectively blown. Needless to say, Daniel was pretty done with the whole thing after being asked to complete so many chores in order to learn karate. However, Miyagi demanded that he showcase all the movements he had practiced over the last few days, and when Daniel instinctively blocked a strike using his paint the fence movement, it became evident that Miyagi was indeed a shrewd teacher and a wise old man. Number 5. Learning balance. After this, Miyagi and Daniel traveled to the shorefront during high tide, and Daniel had to stand in the midst of the tide. He was instructed to kick the waves when the tide came in, and, well, let's just say it's not as easy as it sounds. This intense training teaches a student strength, balance, and coordination. Number 6. Fishing Review. The fishing review is a training routine meant to accumulate all the above lessons into one. For this, Miyagi takes his students out onto a lake where they're made to stand on the bow of the boat. Then, they're asked to perform all his moves by tipping the boat over or scaring the fish away. Number 7. Punching. Punching in Miyagi-Do Karate requires the user focus all their power on a single point in the knuckles. Then, by twisting the entire body, you can deliver a blow that will easily break bones on impact. Also, you have to add a signature shout or a ki upon impact, which is undoubtedly pretty intimidating. Number 8. Focus. Miyagi asked his students to build new walls for his dojo in order to teach them focus, but when nailing the wooden boards together, the student must push in the nails with a single strike of the hammer. This requires focus and precision, which aren't really the qualities most teenagers are known for. Number 9. Drum technique. According to Mr. Miyagi, the best way to avoid a punch is to not be there. Thus, the drum technique becomes a fundamental technique in Miyagi-Do Karate as it is directly based on the aforementioned principle. After allowing Daniel to play with a Japanese pellet drum for a little while, Miyagi takes his student to Sato's cannery in Okinawa. Here, with the assistance of ropes and hooks, Daniel was taught how to avoid the blow just as it comes by twisting his body. If performed correctly, the user should be able to avoid any strike with this technique. Number 10. Primary target. Miyagi taught Daniel to focus on a single target on the opponent's body while simultaneously distracting them. By dropping something important, the user can get in position to target a vulnerable spot and then use the chance to find an escape. For Miyagi, it's not necessary to win the fight as long as you can escape safely. Number 11. Miyagi-Do Kata. This is definitely the most important technique in Miyagi's arsenal, and it's extremely crucial to the entirety of Miyagi-Do Karate. This kata is inspired by the workings of the bonsai tree. It begins by pushing both fists to the ground, which is followed by moving the arms up to the chest and pushing outwards. This leaves the user's palms facing upwards, representing the branches. Then, the right hand is raised up to the forehead, and the left hand is positioned downwards. The user must then begin turning until their body is facing right. Then, the position switches, and the practitioner must face left. A true master of Miyagi-Do Karate performs this action so many times that it becomes the natural flow of their body, freeing their mind. Number 12. Raise and lower the flag. Daniel used this training to teach the young Robbie Keane in the Cobra Kai series. Each morning, Daniel would task his students with raising the flag outside LaRusso's car dealership, alternating hands until the task was complete. Number 13. Washing the windows. This method is similar to painting the fence, where Robbie used a squeegee to clean the windows of Daniel's car dealership. 14. Sweeping the floor. This lesson involved Robbie cleaning the dealership floor with a large push broom. While sweeping the floor, the user is supposed to move his or her front foot, followed by their right foot, until they reach the end. Then, using a foot planted firmly on the ground, they have to pivot 180 degrees until the entire place is spotless. 15. Staple the file. The student must use the palm of their hand to staple thick piles of papers in an attempt to condition their hands. 16. The wheel technique. The wheel requires two people to move in perfect synchronization with each other while standing in a circle. The idea here is to read and support each other's movements so well that you create a stronger defense in the face of multiple enemies coming from different directions. To teach Sam and Robbie this technique, Daniel had them stand on the floating deck in the dojo and perform their moves while ensuring that they didn't topple each other over. Number 17. Shochu Gaiko. This is a Japanese exercise that involves training on the hottest days of the year. The objective is to adapt to environmental changes. This prepares the students of Miyagi-Do Karate to be ready for a fight even in the worst of conditions. Number 18. Kangaiko. Similar to Shochu Gaiko, but involving cold climates instead of hot ones.
Defense takes on many forms.
19. Defense takes many forms. Well, now we're getting into the more aggressive aspects of Miyagi-Do Karate, which were mostly kept away from Daniel during the first couple of movies. However, a sparring match between Sato's nephew and Daniel quickly revealed that Miyagi-Do could be extremely dangerous when necessary. After a well-timed strike to the back of the thigh disabled him, Daniel learned that Miyagi-Do's form of defense could range from blocking a punch to using aggressive tools that could disable the opponent. 20. Miyagi Ancestral Legacy. This is where Daniel learned the true history of the Miyagi family. According to Chosen, the Miyagi ancestors once fought Japanese invaders and were not above killing to accomplish this. He also mentions a specific technique that could kill an opponent with a single strike. This side of the normally peaceful Miyagis is definitely surprising, to say the least. 21. Miyagi pressure points. This allows the practitioner to use their knowledge of human anatomy to disable an opponent's limbs. As Chosen said, when an enemy insists on war, you take away their ability to wage it. 22. Protect the egg. In the series, when Chosen takes over briefly in Daniel and Johnny's absence, he assigns the students one egg each. He then asks the students to protect their eggs at any cost, but they fail by fanning out to protect their individual eggs, which allows Chosen to take them all out one by one. The history of Miyagi-Do Karate in the film series.
Right the circle. Left the circle.
The Karate Kid. The first film is where we're introduced to this elusive yet fascinating form of fighting. We witness most of the basic training methods and we begin to learn the philosophies behind Miyagi-Do Karate. At the 1984 All-Valley Tournament, we also witnessed one of the greatest kicks of all time when Daniel LaRusso performed the formidable crane kick, knocking out Johnny in the process.
Breathe in through nose.
The Karate Kid, Part 2. In Karate Kid 2, Mr. Miyagi takes Daniel on a trip to his hometown, Okinawa, where we have an encounter with Miyagi's rival, Sato. Here, a match between Sato's nephew Chosen and Daniel reveals the more violent aspects of the Miyagi-Do karate style. Things eventually escalate to the point of a death match where Daniel finds himself pretty overwhelmed by Chosen's aggressive tactics. However, he eventually succeeds by perfecting the drumming technique Miyagi taught him. Karate Kid, Part 3. Here, Daniel participates in the 1985 All-Valley Tournament in an attempt to retain his title, but finds Kreese and his friends Terry Silver and Mike Barnes standing in the way. Despite being on the losing end for a lot of the film, Daniel is eventually able to win by mastering the Miyagi kata and pinning his final opponent, Terry Silver, to the floor. The history of Miyagi-Do Karate in Cobra Kai. After the reopening of Cobra Kai at the hands of Johnny Lawrence, Daniel finds himself returning to Miyagi-Do. He also takes in Lawrence's son as a student, but the boy is unfortunately defeated in the All-Valley Tournament due to Cobra Kai's dirty tactics. Despite this, Daniel ends up reopening Miyagi's dojo in order to teach the kids in the valley an alternative form of fighting. Sam, Daniel's daughter, becomes the second fighter in the dojo. Tensions begin to spike between Cobra Kai and Miyagi-Do, as history always finds a way to repeat itself. The conflict escalates to the point where there's a massive altercation between the two schools, during which Robbie Keane ends up kicking his rival, Cobra Kai's star student Miguel Diaz, off of a staircase. This is, of course, not a good look for a karate school that holds its peaceful methods close to its heart. As a result, Daniel ends up closing Miyagi-Do Karate. In the third season, Chosen visits Daniel on a trip to Japan. We learn that Chosen has opened up his own dojo in Japan where he continues to teach the Miyagi way. Meanwhile, Sam reopens Miyagi-Do Karate along with Dimitri, Frank, Abe, and Little Red after facing bullying by the Cobra Kais. This eventually leads to a fight between the two groups where the Miyagi students have the upper hand until Sam suffers from a panic attack due to the memories of the high school face-off. The fight ends brutally, with Hawk breaking his best friend Dimitri's arm. However, this reveals the depths of Kreese's violent mentality, and Daniel is left with no other option than to reopen his school. Eventually, Daniel's Miyagi-Do Karate and Johnny's newly founded Eagle Fang Karate join hands to form a new dojo, better equipped to handle the Cobra Kai threat. During this time, Johnny and Lawrence also learn that Robbie has joined Cobra Kai, which leads to an agreement between the three dojos to compete in the All-Valley Tournament. The stakes are pretty high, as the sensei from the losing dojo would be forced to quit teaching forever. In the fourth season, we see Johnny and Daniel struggle with co-teaching the dojo, but eventually they manage to get along. A mixture of the two opposing styles emerges, but not without its challenges. At one point, the two senseis face off against each other to see who's better, but it ends up being even. After this, the two coaches break off their agreement. However, a short while after the incident, Hawk, one of Cobra Kai's star students, enters Miyagi-Do and ends up fighting for them at the tournament. The boys' finals are held between Hawk and Robbie, and since they've been trained at both Cobra Kai and Miyagi-Do, a mixture of techniques is used in the battle. The fight ends in a sudden death round where Hawk defeats Robbie, winning the title. In the girls' division final, Tori ends up fighting against Sam, but unfortunately, Miyagi-Do loses this bout. Not only does Cobra Kai win the Great Challenge, but Terry Silver also agrees to finance Cobra Kai dojos all throughout the valley. Despite losing, Daniel refuses to shut the dojo down and enlists Chosen to defeat his rivals, as he has to give up coaching as per the bet. We also learned that Terry had actually paid off the referee to fix the matches, which implies that Miyagi-Do is indeed in better form. In the 5th season, the students of Miyagi-Do begin training under Chosen. It culminates in a fight between Miyagi-Do, Eagle Fang, and Cobra Kai in order to gain entry into the highly respected Saikai Taikai tournament. Things only get worse when our heroes realize that Terry Silver is now in complete control of the dojos after getting Kreese framed for a fake assault. The Miyagi Fangs break into Cobra Kai and a fierce fight ensues. Without giving away too many spoilers, let's just say that we finally get a chance to see the champion, Daniel LaRusso, fight in all his glory during the final stages of the battle. And to be honest, it doesn't get any more satisfying than that. Major students of Miyagi-Do.
Sometimes you have no choice but to kill.
Chosen Toguchi. Chosen, the nephew of Mr. Miyagi's rival, Sato, was taught the style by his uncle. However, Chosen practices a much more aggressive form of Miyagi-Do, which focuses more on offense. Though he and Daniel started out as bitter rivals, they would eventually become very good friends.
Now ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Daniel LaRusso, the original Karate Kid, is actually the one who started off this martial arts adventure. He eventually found himself under Mr. Miyagi's tutelage after receiving severe bullying from Cobra Kai members. Not only did Miyagi teach Daniel about fighting, but he also made him a more confident and considerate individual. Despite becoming the owner of a successful car dealership, Daniel always carries the lessons of Miyagi-Do in his heart, even practicing them in everyday scenarios. Eventually, in the Cobra Kai series, Daniel would reopen the Miyagi Dojo in order to save the children of the valley from Cobra Kai's influence. Robbie Keane. Robbie would voluntarily become Daniel's first student in an attempt to get back at his neglectful father, Johnny Lawrence. After being coached in the ways of the Miyagi-Do, Keane would end up becoming an extremely proficient fighter in a very short span of time. Though he would eventually split away from Daniel and join Cobra Kai, it's undeniable that LaRusso and Johnny's boy share a special bond. Marvelous verdict! As we said before, Miyagi-Do is actually way more than just a fighting style. It teaches practitioners to find balance in their lives and improve their inner selves, which are pretty necessary lessons for vulnerable teenagers. To be honest, the valley would be full of violent karatekas if it wasn't for Miyagi-Do, and we couldn't be more grateful for it. But what are your thoughts? Is Miyagi-Do the best fighting style in the Karate Kid universe? Let us know in the comments section down below, because that's it for this video, but don't forget to click on the subscribe button to stay updated with all our marvelous content. And maybe consider giving it a like if you want us to continue making the stuff you love. This is Wheezy249 signing off for now, but you can always find me on Twitch, and until next time, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.